Welcome, SENS Talk.
Russell winds in, feeds it back across the strike, and scores! Brady Tkachuk makes it 2-0. Claude Giroux, hit along, scores!
Tim Stutzock, Ross, Tkachuk score! The captain, Brady Tkachuk, buries it with 1:18 to go.
See you later. Go, SENS, go. Welcome to SENS Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. As you already know, it's been a wild last 24 hours in the National Hockey League, between the Florida Panthers taking down the Edmonton Oilers in 7 games to win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Shout out to Matthew Tkachuk, by the way, and the Tkachuk family. Of course, the Linus Ullmark trade, which we briefly spoke about last night, and I'm going to get into that in a couple minutes, of course. And as well, the Arizona Coyotes, their owner, Morello, is out. So a lot of information coming at us in the last 24 hours, but what we're going to focus on is the biggest news, in my opinion anyways. It might be a little biased. The biggest news, in my opinion, is Linus Ullmark being traded to your Ottawa Senators. Yeah, that's right, with like 15 minutes left before puck drop last night, Steve Stamkos and Don Sweeney cooked up an incredible deal. Well, if you're a Sens fan, that is. It's an incredible deal that sees Linus Ullmark coming to your Ottawa Senators. The Vezina Trophy winner only cost 25th overall in this year's draft, which actually, ironically enough, was Boston's first-round pick. You know, they sent it to Detroit, Detroit sent it to us, and then we sent it back to Boston. So a little bit of recycling going on. You love to see it. If you're a Boston fan, there you go. You got your first-round pick back. On top of that, you also get Mark Kaslick, who is a solid fourth-line center, and we'll break that down in a few minutes when I take a look at each individual part of this trade. I actually like Mark Kaslick a lot, and I think he could be a pretty decent player for the Bruins. And Jonas Korpisalo, the goaltender, also goes back to the Boston Bruins in this trade with 25% of his salary retained. So that's $1 million per year for the next few years. So, look, I've seen a lot of excitement. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is a masterclass for Steve Stamkos. Chef Stamkos cooked. And I completely agree. I said it last night. I'll say it again. Completely agree. Chef Stamkos, Senators General Manager Steve Stamkos, Steady Steve Stamkos, whatever the hell you want to call him, absolutely nailed this trade. Absolutely nailed this trade. I said it last night. I'll say it again. This was his first major move in the National Hockey League, and he successfully beat out one of the most experienced and well-established and well-respected GMs of the National Hockey League, Don Sweeney. Just took him to lunch, basically. I mean, you get the dump albatross type contract with Jonas Korpisalo, who you already been offering to Boston all year, and they already said no. So you got that off the books. You get rid of Mark Kaslick, a fourth-line center who clearly was not in the long-term vision of this management group. They've been trying to trade him all year as well. He's gone. And you give back 25th overall, which originally was Boston's pick anyways. You get to keep 7th overall in this year's draft. So you keep your better first, round pick. And that late first, by the way, this draft, it's a deep draft, don't get me wrong, but it's top-heavy when I talk about deep. After the 15th or 20th overall range, it does start to drop off. So that late first is more like an early second anyways, and that's not to say Boston's not going to get a solid player, but it's a piece that Ottawa definitely can give up, considering they have 7th overall already, and you're getting Linus Ullmark back, on top of getting rid of Korpisalo and Kaslick. I mean, my goodness, absolute masterclass for Steve Stamkos and the Ottawa Senators, and once again, we're going to talk about each player in a moment here, and I'm going to rave about Linus Ullmark. Do not even get me started right now. But just purely based off the fact you got Korpisalo's contract off the books, okay, and Kaslick off the books, and you only had to give up 25th overall to get Ullmark on top of those 2 contracts you're trying to move anyways. Just an absolute masterclass once again by Steve Stamkos, and it is really a nice change of pace. It really, really is to see your general manager on the positive end of squeezing another GM out of what they were originally asking for. We have, for far too long, been the team that's bought for far too much, given way too much, and got little in return. Maybe that's changed with Steve Stamkos. This is a great start. And let's just get into kind of the circumstances around the trade, the extension, and then we're going to get into the player breakdown. So look, Linus Ullmark did need some convincing. He did need some convincing to waive to come to Ottawa. It's been reported by Haggerty, a Boston reporter, that, Daniel Alfredsson, SENS legend and fellow Swede, Daniel Alfredsson, spoke to Linus Ullmark and convinced him to waive to come to Ottawa. Also, Ullmark didn't want to be the backup in Boston, so he definitely was interested to begin with. But it looks like Daniel Alfredsson, SENS legend, baby, gotta love him, kind of helped get that over the finish line. Now, as well, I just want to mention this. Shout out to Jeff Merrick and 32 Thoughts podcast for this. I had no idea. Apparently, Linus Ullmark and Anton Forsberg were a tandem before, way back. And, they kind of hinted maybe goalie hugs are coming to Ottawa. You love to see it. Shout out to Martian on Twitter for this incredible art, by the way, of Linus Ullmark in Bruins and SENS colors doing the goalie hug. Cannot wait to see that, tandem back together. Him and Forsberg will be really awesome, and I love goalies. I'm a goalie nerd. If you know me, you know that. I'm a goalie nerd. I love goalies, and I'm so excited about this. And just seeing some personality back in the SENS tandem, some confidence, some swagger. Such a nice, steady change of pace compared to what we've frankly been used to the last few years. Now, speaking of the tandem, let's just say this. The SENS next year will have a cap hit of $8.75 million next year for Ullmark, Forsberg, and Korpisalo's 25% retained salary, with the actual dollars being $8.25 million. That's a lot of money in your tandem, but when you're getting a guy like Linus Ullmark, which we're going to talk about in a second, it's very worth it, all right? I mean, once again, a guy like that, as Steve Staios said today on TSN 1200, if you get the opportunity to trade for Linus Ullmark, you do it. So doesn't matter how much it's going to cost, you do it, and they did it, and I'm so excited that they did. And the SENS desperately needed a goalie. I mean, my goodness, this year, when the SENS had a 900 save percentage or better, in 39 games with a save percentage above 900, they had a record of 31-6-2. Shout out to SENS statistician Trent Reynard for that fact. Just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable that with literally below league average goaltending, the league average for save percentage is 903. With below league average goaltending, Ottawa wins 31 more games last year and wins 31 of 39. That is actually insane. So I don't think Linus Ullmark's going to put up 938 like he did a year ago with Boston. I think he's going to do much better than 900, though. I'll tell you that much. And that just means, you know what? The SENS might be knocking on that playoff door next year. Let's just leave it at that because, obviously we want an extension for Linus Ullmark, and I'll mention this before we get into Linus Ullmark and what to expect from this star Vezina winning goaltender. It's reported that he wants $7 million for 5 years on his next extension. Steve Staios today on his radio hit on TSN 1200 also mentioned there will be contract extension talks with Ullmark. They're going to be pursuing that probably as soon as July 1st in a few days here. So hopefully they can get something done soon. That's enough rambling, though, about all the context around this trade. Let's take a look at the actual players themselves. So as I already kind of alluded to in this video just like a minute ago, we all remember Linus Ullmark and the Boston Bruins' dominant, frankly historic 2022-2023 regular season. The Swedish goalie was unbelievable that year and brought home some nice hardware, winning the Vezina and sharing the William M. Jennings Award with Jeremy Swayman as well. That's a shared award, and he was remarkable that year. He played in 47 games, winning 40 of them with a 46-1 record, 189 goals against average, 938 save percentage. Just absolutely unbelievable. Once again, I said this in my last two videos, actually. Linus Ullmark has taken over SENS Talk. It's unbelievable. 3 straight videos on this absolute gem of a goalie. And this is a gem of a stat. Linus Ullmark, since 2011, has had an above 900 save percentage in every pro season he's played in. And by the way, 2011 was the year before he was drafted. So since being drafted, he's not had below 900 save percentage. And I have to emphasize how insane that is. Even the best goalies, even the top prospects in the AHL, in Sweden, in Europe, wherever, they struggle when they're developing. Goalies take a lot longer to develop. They take a much longer period of time. That's why goalies, they age like whiskey. When they're in their 30s, a lot of players start to drop off then. Usually goalies are close to their peak, hitting their peak 32, 33, 34. Look at Craig Anderson, for example. That happens a lot. And goalies, once again, they take a long time to develop. So the fact that this guy, throughout his development, has been putting up above average numbers at the minimum, gets me excited. I don't know about you, that gets me excited. And what I'm trying to say is he's got a proven track record to be a solid, established, starting star goaltender. Ullmark last year, his stats dropped off a bit. 40 games, 22, 10, and 7, 2.57 goals against average, 915 save percentage, 2 shutouts. Look, No one's going to follow up, frankly, the best season in modern Cap history, with putting up the same numbers. And if you look at those numbers, those are way above league average. Those numbers will get any team into a playoff spot. Those numbers are fine by me. He did lose his starting role to Jeremy Swayman, and there's multiple factors to that. Some people are just saying, oh, he lost his starting role to, Jeremy Swayman. He's a bad goalie. Oh, he didn't play in the playoffs. Look, Jeremy Swayman's the future there. He's much younger. He's easily as good. He's put up similar numbers. And, when you have two starting goalies that are, elite like that, one of them has to sit on the bench. There's only one at the play-in. So I never understood that. I think it's kind of ridiculous. And just look at Ullmark's career stats. I mean, this guy is actually a stud. And, I've been a fan of his since Buffalo. Once again, I'm a goalie nerd. So been a fan of his since Buffalo when he really did well there. Surprised a lot of people. And he's just going to surprise a lot of people again here in Ottawa, I'm telling you. In his career, 247 games played, 138 wins, 73 losses, and 23 shootout or overtime losses, with 8 shutouts in that span as well, with a 2.51 goals against average and a .918 save percentage. So what you got last year from Linus Ullmark is what you should probably expect from Linus Ullmark going into next year. 915, 918, maybe a little closer than 910, 915. And that range is what Linus Ullmark should definitely get. The ceiling, of course, is 920, 930. But 910, 915, that's way above league average. That gets, frankly, any team to a playoff spot. And that's what you should expect from Linus Ullmark next year, regardless of your thoughts on the Sens defense, which, in my opinion, should only get better next year with the new system, new coaching, and hopefully some reinforcements as well. I want to take a look at the split stats for Ullmark between Buffalo and Boston. Once again, it just shows that, and keep in mind, with Buffalo, he was developing, still trying to establish himself in the National Hockey League behind, let's just say, not a great defensive team. 912 save percentage, 2.78 goals against average with Buffalo. In Boston, 924 save percentage, 2.28 goals against average. What I'm trying to say is this guy's a star, okay? I can't say it enough. The guy's a star. Wherever he goes, he puts up numbers. And with Buffalo, I mean, that was a really rough team, a young team, a rebuilding team, a team without real defensive prowess. And he put up some solid numbers. So Ottawa, who is not exactly as bad as Buffalo as they were in that point, I'm just saying, things should look good for Ottawa with this guy next year. Now, Trent Raynor, our Sens Talk statistician, took a look at some advanced analytics about Linus Ullmark and his time in Buffalo and Boston to compare the two. There are a couple of points of concern and points of optimism. So take a look at your screen right now. Shout out to Jamie Dean, the lead graphic designer for Sens Talk, for this beautiful graphic as well. Here's a point of concern about Linus Ullmark, as I mentioned in my last video. His high danger save percentage with Buffalo is marginally lower than it was compared to Jonas Korpisalo and Anton Forsberg this year, at .798 compared to Forsberg and Korpisalo at .799. Not exactly inspiring, especially when compared to Ullmark's save percentage and high danger chances with Boston at .841. Clearly, there's a massive difference between the two. But here's a point of optimism. Ullmark, you could say, has way better numbers in Boston. He also faced a lot of more difficult chances in Boston. He faced nearly 2 times more rebound opportunities in Boston, put up better numbers, tenfold. So while my point basically is, yes, Ullmark's numbers were better with Boston compared to Buffalo, my counterpoint to that is 2 things. 1, his numbers were still solid with Buffalo, and 2, of course, they were better in Boston. I mean, just look at the situations between the two clubs. And the fact that Ullmark still performed remarkably and very, very well in Buffalo, frankly, to me, says it all. Now, with that, let's get into what Boston's getting. Let's start off with the goaltender going back to their way. Jonas Korpisalo, who I'm a fan of. Don't get me wrong. I am a fan of Jonas Korpisalo. I am really upset, frankly, it didn't work out here in Ottawa, but getting rid of him does make sense for the Sens moving long-term forward. Last year in 55 games, 21 wins, 26 losses, and 4 overtime losses for an .890 save percentage, a 3.27 goals against average, which, by the way, both of those way below league average. League average for save percentage, .903. Goals against average, 2.97. So at both metrics, just not looking good whatsoever. In his NHL career, 276 games, 115 wins, 107 losses, 29 overtime losses as well, for a .901 save percentage and a 3.06 goals against average, which is closer to league average, but still not, at that rate. Money Puck as well has him ranked as the second worst statistical goaltender via advanced analytics from last season as well. Let's just say this was not a good year for Jonas Korpisalo. You can blame the defense. You can blame, the new team. You can blame him. There's a lot of factors in play. All I know is when the goalies in Ottawa, whether it's Forsberg or Korpisalo, which, by the way, it was Korpisalo most of the time this happened, allowing goals in the first shot or two or sometimes three, like 25 times this year. Clearly, some of that is on the goaltending. So clearly, Korpisalo needed a change of scenery, and he's got it now. And I think, frankly, this is a guy that's going to bounce back with Boston. Boston's known to play a very strong defensive team, which will only help, Korpisalo's numbers go up. On top of the fact, his playing time should be cut down as well. His NHL career is established. This is a guy that could definitely play 25, 30 games in the National Hockey League, win a good bulk of those, and put up some decent league average numbers. You should expect that from him for sure next year with Boston. On top of the fact that, there's a solid defensive team in front of him with less playing time, and just looking at his overall career, those numbers should rebound for sure. A save percentage anywhere between 900 to 910 is what I would expect from Joonas Korpisalo. And Korpisalo is a guy that brings experience. This is a guy that, was with the LA Kings a couple years ago, was in the playoffs with them, and it's an experienced backup goaltender potentially there for Boston. I know they just signed, a prospect, Brandon Bussi, I believe is his name, to a one-year contract extension, so there will be some competition in net there. Can't see Korpisalo not getting that backup spot, though, so this is a really solid depth option there for Boston in the crease to back up Jeremy Swayman. Now, once again, if you're a Boston fan, I don't think you're thrilled about this, though. $3 million for the next 3 years for a below-league average goalie in his latter years of his career. Probably not the greatest thing. But hey, you know what? You never know. Once again, this is a guy that, if he bounces back, can be an effective backup, which is so valuable for a team. And I wish nothing but the best once again to Joonas Korpisalo. I really do hope he bounces back, and in a big way for Boston. But, speaking of bouncing back, Mark Haslick, another key piece of this trade for the Boston Bruins. I think if you're a Boston Bruin fan, Mark Haslick's the piece you should really, really be excited about. Last year, once again, I need to preface this by saying he's not an offensive dynamo, okay? He's a defensive guy, face-off specialist, and those are very, very valuable for teams. Last year, 63 games, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points with a 54.4% face-off rate in his entire NHL career. Under 200 games, so he's still a bit young, still trying to establish himself. 144 games, 14 goals, 11 assists for 25 total points with a 56.3% face-off rate. So, look, this guy wins face-offs. He wins face-offs, he wins face-offs, he wins face-offs. That's what you want from your fourth-line center. He's cheap, makes under $900,000 as well. So for Boston, they wanted a face-off winning center. There you go. You got him, man. For Ottawa, once again, as I already mentioned at the beginning of this video, for some reason, we're trying to get rid of Mark Haslick for a while, and they just did. So, they get rid of Korpisalo, who they've been trying to get rid of. They did it. They've been trying to get rid of Haslick as well. They did it, and they only cost a 25th overall pick, once again, to get Ullmark. So, just thinking about everything, once again, about the trade, I just can't get over it. Absolute masterclass for Steve Staios, just because, once again, 2 contracts off the books that he didn't want. Essentially an early second-round pick for a Vezina winning goalie. Just unbelievable. But back to Mark Haslick. Sorry to get off topic there for a sec. Back to Mark Haslick. This is a prime piece for the Boston Bruins. I think this is a guy that, in their system, which is a very defensive-oriented style of play, very physical as well, this is a guy that can buy into that system, in my opinion. He was 5th on the SENS last year in hits with 126, down about 25 from the previous year. And if you look at his first season in the NHL, where he played 16 games, he had 51 hits. So, if you look at that, that rate in 16 games, 51 hits, compare it to the next couple of years, for some reason, I don't know why, he dialed back the physicality. I really do not understand it. I know, obviously, short sample size, easier to kind of come out with a burst of speed, but still, this guy should easily be, especially as a fourth-line center, energy guy who's defensive really only. He needs to be bringing more physicality. This is the reason why he got dealt out of Ottawa. He should absolutely be ahead of a guy like really Greg or Artem Zub. Come on, he should be top 2 in my opinion. What else are you doing on the fourth line if you're not scoring? You gotta provide some physicality. You gotta provide some other intangibles. And Haslick, other than his faceoff rate, really didn't bring much. So I really wish nothing but the best for Mark Haslick as well. Once again, if you're a Boston Bruin fan, this is a guy that any NHL team could use on their fourth line. Once again, very cheap. Wins faceoffs. If you can just dial up that physicality a little bit, maybe put in a couple more goals here and there, that's a very ideal, very cheap, and frankly, very effective fourth-line center. So I think that is, frankly, the most underrated piece as part of this trade. Obviously, the biggest piece is going to be the 25th overall, pick going back, but it's very underrated, Mark Haslick going back. It's a very sneaky pickup. He can play some penalty kill time as well for you. It really, really never hurts. As I already said, to have a fourth-line center in your bottom 6, that can win faceoffs. Once again, a faceoff specialist in your bottom 6 can be put in all situations, and that's very valuable for a Boston Bruin team. So in terms of who won this trade, I mean, I think Ottawa just won the trade because they got rid of 2 guys they didn't want, and they gave back Boston's original first for a Vezina winning goalie. And for Boston, I mean, taking on that Korpisalo deal is a little rough. But you get a guy like Kastelik who can bring some value. You get 25th overall who can, potentially be a guy that brings a lot of value, right? That's still a first-round pick. That's still a valuable pick. So, I think both teams kind of did what they wanted to do in this one, where Ottawa got the guy and Boston kind of got rid of the guy and, filled in some depth pieces. So with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Who won this trade? Do you think the Ottawa Senators did, or do you think the Boston Bruins did a fine job as well? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Actually, tomorrow, I'll have a forward draft preview video out for you all. So I'll see you back tomorrow here at SENS Talk. So till tomorrow, take care, and go Sens go.